to kick off. The meeting is now called to order. We would like to start our meeting first with an invocation by Reverend David Bluford. David, if you would give us our invocation, please. Thank you.
All right. Good morning. Thank you, President Ed. Let's have prayer today as we begin. God, we are blessed as we gather together at this time because of the love that you have for us. We thank you for the day that you've given us, Lord, and we lift up those who are truly involved even now in the throes of the storm and in the way that it moves itself inland. And Lord God, we pray for your protection in their behalf. Now guide us in all that we do, that we can be of service to those around us, and bless us, God, as we continue to serve and as you give us opportunities, because we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Bluford. Mr. Noah Myers, I'd like to turn it over to you at this time, if you would acknowledge our visitors and guests, if we have any, and do your thing.
Well, good afternoon, Farragut Rotarians and friends and guests. Welcome to another beautiful day in virtual paradise. We're glad to see a good turnout today. I haven't been able to check and see exactly who's on the call with us. So if you are a guest, please let me know. You can smoke signal me, but it might be easier just waving and just letting us know. We do have a guest speaker that we'll be introducing in a few moments. Any guest? Otherwise, I guess it's not as exciting to bring a guest to our virtual Farragut meetings as it is to treat them to lunch and a real meeting. So we'll kind of get back on that track, hopefully sometime this winter. Well, how about we take the opportunity and share some good news or some humor? Would anybody like to jump in? Ed, are you there? Did everybody catch me all of a sudden? Ed hasn't moved in about 3 minutes. I'm getting nervous that either my Wi-Fi connection is down or something, or his is down.
He's moving.
Okay.
Well, I just got a message that I'm still here, but it's my Wi-Fi is unstable for some reason. It usually is, but I'm hoping that I can hang in there.
Did everybody catch did catch me when I asked for any good news or some humor?
I had some good humor in the newsletter. I don't know if anyone noticed it or not.
Yes, it was noticed.
It was noted. Okay.
I saw it.
Tom, I especially enjoyed the jokes, and my kids did as well. So
good. Glad to help out at the Bertini house. I had to explain one of them to my wife. She didn't get the Eskimo joke.
Well, who besides Josh, anybody else want to try to claim the distance award away from Knoxville, Tennessee today? Josh is down in the Gulf, so he's probably got about 500 miles on us. Anybody claim any more distance than 500 miles?
A little breezy down there, Josh.
You know what? It is a little breezy, and the waves are pretty intense. But with everything all in all, it has not been too bad. I mean, as you can see outside right now, I mean, it's really beautiful out. So, I mean, it's not bad at all. And white sand, and luckily the hurricane that could have hit us moved over toward Texas and Louisiana. But we'll, pray that doesn't really hurt Houston, because it looks like it's going to be another bad hurricane there. So, but everybody's watching it down in Florida.
Where are you?
I'm at Port St. Joe,
Okay.
right above Panama City. If you don't know it. Yep.
You'd be below. You'd be kind of between Apalachicola and Panama City, wouldn't you, Josh?
That's exactly right. Apalachicola is probably the nearest town or city. And if you remember where the hurricanes hit back like 2 or 3 years ago, Mexico Beach, which was just leveled, that's about 3 to 6 miles down the coast. So, and there's nothing left of Mexico Beach anymore. So,
almost at the Springs.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just the layout here. It's just made for hurricanes just to move through and destroy. It's pretty flat, and there's not a lot stopping big windstorms. So, but yeah, it's they've rebuilt this whole area up, and it's beautiful. So we're enjoying the vacation. Be here till Monday or Sunday.
Is Terry Curbs out there? Last I heard, Terry was somewhere between Sturgis and Seattle. Is he on this call?
Yeah.
He's not on the call. I
Okay.
talked to his son. I talked to Matt yesterday, and he was in Modesta battling through the smoke that they've got out west right now. That was the last I heard from him.
So he's now down in California?
Yes.
Okay. So he made it through Washington, and now he's heading down the coast is what it sounds like.
That's what it sounded like to me.
Good. Well, hopefully he's safe and having a good time and staying clear of the wildfires. Anybody else in any faraway locations in joining us for virtual Rotary today?
I'm here off Lovell Road.
That's pretty far, Ron.
Yes, it is.
Ron,
Now you know that I'm here.
Ron, you want to give everybody an update on Celebration?
Well, the celebration starts tomorrow, and I'm leaving in the morning going down. And if all goes well, I'll show Friday night, Monday night, and if I qualify, and I should, maybe next Friday night, the 4th, I can show in TED in the championship class. So keep your fingers crossed.
So at Celebration, is it usually 7 days or 10 days, something like that?
It's a 10-day show.
Yeah. Okay.
There's 100 odd classes over 10 days.
Well, that's awesome. We wish you best of luck, and I know that's an exciting event for you every year, and you've got a pretty good track record out there. So we expect you to bring home some blue ribbons.
I'm going to try my darndest. Keep your fingers crossed.
All right. Anybody else with any news? All right. I guess you're making my job pretty easy today, everybody. Ed Jones, you want to take it back over?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Noah. And it's always good to share, learn what everybody is doing, and glad to see everybody is well, and certainly appreciate you joining us today for this virtual meeting. Before we get into our official meeting, I do have a few announcements and a few reminders that I'd like to share with you. First of all, I'm going to do something, and this is called a smile, in case you're wondering. We have a member who has graciously accepted the call to serve as our next Rotary Foundation chair. It's a formality, but our board meeting will be next week, and we hope to officially fill that position with this individual. And he's also graciously, once we do get back in our in-person meeting, to kind of shore up the Sergeant at Arms position as needed. So that was a very, very big, that was a godsend. We certainly appreciate that. And we'll make that announcement as we officially confirm that person. A few dates, upcoming events that we have from the district. Every month, our district governor holds a district-wide Facebook meeting. This month, it's going to be on September 15th. And of course, on September 19th, I got a message from Reverend Bluefoot, who's our president-elect. He'll be attending the PETS orientation and grants training, along with our grants chairman, Becky. Now, the September 19th event, they're working on, depending on the number of responses that they get, they're trying to have this be an in-person meeting. If it's lacking or falls short, then it will be a virtual meeting. The makeup meeting on October 17th will be virtual only, but it gives individuals an opportunity to, if they cannot make the first meeting, to attend. And of course, on September 19th, we're still sending out calls for volunteers. And I see we have online Mr. Mark Balak. Mark, if you would bring us up to date on that, I would certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, good afternoon. Since the last time we had a meeting or a virtual meeting, I've received at least 5 to 7 more people who've said willing to volunteer and help. And one of them, one of the emails that I got expressed concerns, and I absolutely totally understand their concerns. And that's, I wanted to talk a little bit about that today, although we're going to be interfacing with the public on this, I would suspect that every one of us will be required to wear masks the entire time we're out directing traffic or assisting the nurses or doing whatever else we need to do to help get this done. And those of us who will be handling clipboards and stuff, I will buy a box of latex gloves so that everybody can be gloved up so you do not have to touch the paperwork or the clipboards or like that, so we can minimize contact exposure. And if anybody has any more suggestions, please send me an email and let me know what you think. I am always concerned. I'm very concerned about it. As one who's in the elderly state now, I understand the concerns of this, and I just found out from one of my contractors that he is home now with COVID. Although it's a mild case, he still has it. So luckily, I had not had any contact with him in the last 3 weeks, and he just got diagnosed this past Monday. So I am so far been blessed, knock on wood. But yeah, we're still looking for volunteers. I do have a Zoom meeting this afternoon at 3 o'clock with the new Sentinel, Charlie Barnett, and Empty Stocking Fund to get some more details. And once I find out what those are, Ed, I will send you an email, and to Tom also, so you can update everybody via the newsletter. Other than that, keep your calendars open for September 19th, 7 till whenever we run out of shots or noon, whichever comes first. And I look forward to seeing everybody there. Thanks, Ed.
Mark, let me ask a question. For those that would be giving shots, could you use some face shields in addition to the mask? That's what CMS recommends today.
In regards to that, none of us will be giving shots. There will be student nurses giving shots. However, if you have some extra face shields for people who will be in direct contact with other, like the students that are running clipboards and stuff like that, we gladly accept them to help.
What I can do. Let me see what our supply is.
I appreciate that, Ron. But at the same time, you got to protect your people also. So if you all have a face shield, have your own personal one, bring it if that's what you need, if you feel like it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, this is a very serious issue we're going through right now, and we need to take all precautions.
But CMS recommends using both mask and face shields, not one or the other, but both.
Yes, no, totally agree. Totally agree. And thank you. If you can volunteer some, that'd be fantastic. If you can't, we understand. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. And again, I'd like to remind everybody that this is definitely a very, very important project, and one of our big projects that we do during the year. So thank you for stepping up and making sure that this is going to be a successful event. Moving right along down the line, on October 20th, we have Purple Pinky Day, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that as we get closer to that, but it's just bring about an awareness for the eradication of polio and to raise funds for that event. And also on October 24th, we have World Polio Day. If everybody read the newsletter, I'm sure you got caught up somewhat with the family of Rotary, but would like, Tom, if you have any additional information that you'd like to share with us, we certainly appreciate that.
Thank you, Ed. I had an email yesterday from Joan McAtee, and she is fighting on. She's back home. She's feeling better. They've got her blood pressure under control and her blood sugar. And I think the conclusion up there as to why this happened, and it sort of started hitting her on Wednesday night going into last Thursday. A week ago Monday, she had a cortisone injection into her knee. And being a veteran of many cortisone injections, they affect your blood pressure and they can really affect your blood sugar. And they think that's what happened to her. She just had a real bad reaction to the cortisone. And they gave her some meds, cleared things up, and she went home Sunday. And she's doing much better. But keep them in your thoughts and prayers, she and husband Jim. Betty Cisco is doing better. They adjusted her meds, and she's feeling a lot better. Keep Chris Camp in your prayers. They blasted one of the tumors in her kidney, and she's got 2 more smaller ones they want to work on as well, depending on how this one worked out. And they'll know that in an MRI. Chris Camp is our past president, and she has been battling pancreatic cancer for a year now, and more than a year. And she's really fighting it hard. I'm not sure whether she's on the call with us today or not. If she is, hello, Chris. Hello. That's all I have, President Ed.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tom. Appreciate you bringing us up to date. And I'd like to also put in a reminder, please check your emails and stay on board with us through the newsletter. Tom put some very, very important information trying to keep us connected as we go through this pandemic. Thanks a lot, Tom. Appreciate that. At this time, we'd like to move. I did mention we had the person step up for the Rotary Foundation chair, but we are still looking for, so stand by your phones. We're still looking for a webmaster. That's very high on the list up until September 30th. With some of the things, especially in the environment that we're operating in right now. The webmasters and someone to handle and serve as the host for these Zoom meetings. Very important. So don't be bashful, step up. We certainly would appreciate your service. At this time, we'd like to move into today's program. We've got a very, very interesting program for you. And like to call on Mr. Tom King to introduce our speaker for today.
Ed, I'm honored to introduce our speaker. And before I get into that, as part of the introduction, I have something for everybody here to, I think you'll recognize it probably.
Shake.
Enough of that. Did everybody hear that? Everybody heard that. If you don't know what that was the theme song from James Bond. Our speaker today is one of the Bond girls. I'll have to explain this. I interviewed Pam Neal in her office where she is right now for about 2.5 hours one day. And as I was leaving, I just said, "You have any hobbies?" And she told me a few things. And then she said, "Well, I really love James Bond movies." And I said, "Well, that's really interesting." She said, "But only if Sean Connery's James Bond."
That's right.
So I had to play that today. Pam Neal is a delightful person that I think you will enjoy hearing from today. She wears lots of hats. She's the Minister of Administration at First Baptist Church downtown. And as the Minister of Administration, she is in charge of all of the church's financials, facilities, and personnel. Those are three big jobs just in and of themselves, one at a time, but she does all three. And it's a 1,200 member church. For 21 years, she has been I think it's probably 22 years now, she has been the volunteer chaplain for the Knoxville Police Department. And for the last 13 years has been the chaplain coordinator for all of the other 34 chaplains. That involves scheduling, recruitment, retention of chaplains, and also she serves as a chaplain herself. She is known nationally in her field and internationally. Last July the 22nd, she was sworn into a 2-year term as president of the 2,500 member International Conference of Police Chaplains at their 46th annual training seminar in Wichita. She has a unique perspective about law enforcement. She and her husband recently celebrated their 50th anniversary. And he's one lucky man, I can tell you that. But Ron retired in 2005 as an investigator detective after 32 years with the Knoxville Police Department. She knows the ins and outs of what happens with police officers. And they have 2 sons, and they have 5 grandchildren that she absolutely adores. I will tell you that up front. Here's a quote from Police Chief Eve Thomas about her. Pam's an invaluable member of the Knoxville Police Department, regardless of the time or the day. She has never hesitated to drop whatever she is doing to support our officers when they need her. She's deeply, deeply respected within our department and in her upcoming job as president of the International Conference of Police Chaplains. That shows the respect and the admiration she holds amongst her peers around the country. So to Farragut Rotary today, I introduce to you the Reverend Pam Neal, a wonderful human being, a lover of Sean Connery, and a friend of mine. It's all yours, Pam.
I don't know what else to say now, Tom. I thank you. That was a wonderful introduction. I thank you for that. I thank all of you today for the invitation to be here and the opportunity for me to talk to you about something that's very near and dear to my heart. And I just wonder, you can raise your hands and tell me how many of you knew that there was a chaplain program with the Knoxville Police Department. Anybody know? Okay, more than I expect. Many people do not. It's a very well kept secret in Knoxville. How many of you know that Knoxville has the largest, most experienced and active chaplain program, one of the most in the country? Anybody else know that? And Tom knows that, I know. But while many agencies have ceremonial chaplains that will do prayers at events and so forth, our chaplains are actively supporting our police officers. They work alongside police officers. While some of us may experience stress on our jobs, police officers experience tremendous stress just doing their jobs every day. The things that our officers see, the difficult situations that they have to deal with every day, and they live with the very possibility that exists that they could be injured or they could even be killed on their jobs every single day. So there's a tremendous amount of stress on the officers and on their families. The Knoxville Police Department Chaplain Corps came about in September of 1994 with the idea of helping to relieve some of the stress on police officers. The first class graduated from the very first Chaplain Academy in September of 1994. At that particular time, the morale of the department was low. They had a very high divorce rate. In the police academy that year, the divorce rate was 75%. And so Phil Keith, who was chief at that time, wanted to see what he could do to try to help his officers. And at that time, there was the first ever FBI chaplain, full-time chaplain in the Knoxville office. and he was trying to build a chaplain program for the FBI. And Chief Keith and Jake Popejoy got together, and Jake suggested a chaplain program. Fortunately, Chief Keith bought into that idea, and our chaplain program was born. As you can imagine, officers were pretty skeptical at first. They thought maybe chaplains had been planted to spy on them for the administration. They didn't trust chaplains a lot. So there were two things that happened to kind of bridge that gap. One was to make ride-alongs mandatory for the chaplains. That means they would ride with officers, which gave them the opportunity to build relationships, to get to know the officers to get to know them. And trust grew out of those ride-alongs. The officers began to see that the chaplains really cared about them, and that's why they were there. But the second thing that happened was a change in protocol that said that chaplains would be called out for all death notifications. That means when there was a death and someone had to go and tell the family, that the officer would get a chaplain to go and to do that, to inform someone that their loved one had died. So the officers began to see, hey, this is pretty great. They can help us do this. Because making a notification to a loved one that someone has died is not something police officers really like doing. That's probably one of their very least favorite things to do. And so having the chaplains do that helped grow that relationship. The officers began to appreciate the chaplains, that they could be of help to them, and they began to trust them more and more. Not only does doing a death notification relieve the officer of that task, it also frees up the officer to be able to go about the police work. And so the chaplain is taking care of the family. So last September, our chaplain corps celebrated its 25th anniversary. It's a milestone. It did not only survive those first years from 1994, it has thrived over all these years. Now, law enforcement chaplains everywhere have two purposes. And our first purpose is our main purpose. And that's for us to be a support and an encouragement to police officers. They've got a really difficult job. And as you know, if you've watched any of the news, it's even more difficult right now. We're seeing some of the most difficult times for law enforcement ever. But they deal with some of the very worst situations. They're dealing with some of the very worst people that they have to come in contact with. And so that stress right now is very intense on this profession. So everything we do as chaplains is based on that purpose. How can we give support and encouragement to our officers? The purpose is we're going to be there for them, to give support and encouragement, to be a listening ear, to be someone they can talk to without judgment and with confidentiality. Officers now know they can trust chaplains, that we'll sit down and talk to them. We'll let them talk to us about their stress, about their family problems, about just to vent sometimes about their jobs. But chaplains are also there for their personal situations. If an officer has a death in their family, chaplains are going to be there to extend sympathy and sometimes even do the funeral for the family. If the officer is ill or in the hospital or has family members, the chaplain's going to be there to visit. Of course, we can't right now with COVID-19, but that's something we would normally do, is to be there for that family. We congratulate them if there's a birth of a child, they get a promotion, they buy a new house, or just whatever's going on in their lives. We try to be there for them and encourage them. Our chaplains perform marriage ceremonies for officers or family members. I actually have one chaplain who has performed, if you can believe it, 35 wedding ceremonies for officers or their family members. So the officers know that these chaplains are there for them, that is our full purpose in being there. That's our main purpose. Being a police chaplain is a calling, though. Not every minister can be a chaplain, and we have found that out. It has to be something that you really feel is a calling to support and encourage officers, because it's not always pretty. And sometimes it's difficult for the chaplain as well, and not everyone can do it. And so when I interview candidates for chaplain, I know up front, why do you want to do this? And if it's for any other reason than to give support and encouragement to police officers, it's not going to work. It's true now more than ever. Police officers need people that are going to support and encourage them. And then our secondary purpose is to be a support and assistance to the community in crisis. That means when there's someone in the community in a crisis situation, such as the death of a family member, it could be a car accident, a domestic violence situation, a suicide, any type of situation like that, the officers can call the chaplain to come and to be there for the family. It's still amazing to me to see how chaplains can bring calm to a situation. But we will go to that family, talk to them, help them get a support system in place, assess what the needs are, and just try to help that person through what is probably the worst day of their lives. And I can't tell you how many times someone has said to me, well, I didn't even know we had police chaplains in Knoxville. But the officers love this because with the chaplain helping the family, he or she can return to the police work. And so this is another way, although we're helping someone in the community, we're also helping the officers because we're giving them the time to do the police work while we're helping take care of the family. So we keep records of what we do. All of our chaplains are volunteers. Each one commits to do one duty day a month for 24 hours, and that means from 8 a.m. one morning to 8 a.m. the next morning, that chaplain is on call with the police department for whatever they might need them to do. They're required to do at least one 4-hour or more ride-along each month. That helps build relationships. And chaplains get to know officers, and officers get to know chaplains. Then when that officer needs a chaplain, they've got a name and a face, somebody that they can talk to. They become friends, and they have somebody to talk to. Well, now since March, we've not been able to do the ride-alongs because of COVID-19, which has been difficult for us because it's hard for us to keep in contact with the officers without doing the ride-alongs, and we hope that that's going to change soon. But we try to think of other ways that we can to be there for them. We have monthly meetings where we have training. It's important for us to keep up our skills as chaplains. All of our chaplains have completed a 50-hour training academy so that they know how to handle these different situations. I wouldn't ever want to put a chaplain in a situation without training and knowing how to handle, how to respond effectively to those things. The last thing that I want to happen is for a chaplain to go on a call, not know what to do, and maybe even make a situation worse because they didn't have the proper training. So we have these active chaplains, we have 34, we have 31 right now. All of them have received training that includes the 12 basic courses required by the International Conference of Police Chaplains. Tom mentioned ICPC, which is the leading credentialing organization for law enforcement chaplains. There are 2,400 members of this organization. So we all have these classes that we're required to take to help us be prepared to help officers on the streets. How to make a death notification, how to handle stress, including critical incident stress, substance abuse, suicide, how to handle the death or injury of an officer. What is our legal liability? What about ethics? What about confidentiality? What about the law enforcement family itself? And then there's sensitivity and diversity. You may know that yesterday marked the 4-year anniversary of the line of duty death of Officer Kenny Moats of the Maryville Police Department. We were there that day. I was with the family. Several of our chaplains were with the other officers who were grieving their loss. And while you can never completely train for every situation, I believe we have the best trained chaplains in the world. We are known all across the world as being one of the best trained chaplain programs in numbers, in knowledge, and in experience. I've often hear our chaplains say when they get out on a scene and they see something that can be quite overwhelming, to hear them say later, then my training kicked in and I knew just what to do. So at the end of a 24-hour shift, the chaplain fills out a report and they say what kind of calls they've answered, whether they've done a ride-along. Like we take those daily reports and compile a monthly report and then an annual report. So Would anybody care to guess how many hours our chaplains volunteer every year? Anybody would care to take a guess? Because in addition to being on call 24 hours a day, the chaplains do a lot of other things, and I'll give you just a couple of examples. For instance, on the UT football games, we have maybe 125, 130 officers working that game. They're out there for hours and hours without access a lot of times to any food or water. So we pack goodie bags for them with fruit or snacks and always some water. And as they leave roll call, we hand them a goodie bag to take with them on their post. Some of the churches in the area have been helping us with that lately, and it's come in handy. We have chaplains on the KPD peer support team, so that when there is a critical incident, we have people that can debrief officers on some of these situations where there's a very gruesome, difficult scene, or a horrific accident, or officer-involved shootings, or anything that involves a child. We like to spend time with the officers, just letting them debrief. These are just some of the many, many activities that we do throughout the year. Chaplains on call 24/7, 365 days a year. Anybody want to gander a guess how many hours we volunteer for KPD? Tom, you can't answer.
10,000.
That's a good guess. 10,000 is a good guess, but it's a little more than that. How about 12,000 hours? Now, it's amazing to me that our chaplains give of themselves to this work without any compensation at all. And that should indicate to you the level of commitment and dedication our chaplains have to supporting police officers. And if you want to think about whether or not KPD Chaplain Corps is an asset to the city of Knoxville, just multiply 12,000 hours times a conservative number, what could be, what these chaplains would make on their jobs. Just say a very conservative number, say $20 an hour. And you can see the math tells you what a great asset our chaplains are to the city of Knoxville and to the Knoxville Police Department. So while it's important to have a dollar amount, to know the value, a dollar value, there's really no way to measure the value of the Corps to the men and women of the police department. We do it because we care about them. And I believe we have made, and we are making a difference in the lives of these men and women. We are a 501c3 organization, and we do that so we can accept donations to help us with things like our Peace Officers Bible. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but this is a Bible that we have had customized to KPD called God's Word for Peace Officers. It's a modern translation. It has some articles and special tips for police officers. We give that to all the officers when they graduate from the police academy. It's not something that they're forced to take. It's a gift if they would like to take that. And you will find those Bibles in patrol cars, in offices, and there's always one in the roll call room at the police department. I've even seen them in an arrangement at a funeral of an officer. It meant that much to them. So our Chaplain Corps in Knoxville, I'm very, very proud of the work that they do, because we are a model for law enforcement agencies all over. We've been asked to start chaplain programs all over the country, and it's a joy to be able to do that. But right now, our officers really need our prayers more than ever. But there's tremendous pressure on our officers on the jobs that they're doing. And from their spouses, many of them have concerned spouses and family members who are concerned about their safety. There are many of them leaving the profession. Even right here in Knoxville, officers are leaving it because of this additional stress they're under right now. And of course, that puts an even bigger strain on those that remain. It is a difficult time in law enforcement right now. And it's a difficult time for the family members of a law enforcement officer right now. And so I would just encourage you, if you can, to pray for them, not to remember them when you pray, to think about them. Years ago, I started doing something that I still do today. And this, if I'm driving down the road and see blue lights, I'll stop and pray for those officers right then. So I would ask you to pray for our officers, for their families, and for our chaplains. because it's difficult for chaplains too right now, knowing how we can continue to be that support and encouragement they need with pandemic going on and with all the unrest going on in our country. How can we continue to be that support and encouragement they need? So I appreciate your hearing me today. I can talk all day long, as Tom well knows. I can talk about chaplaincy, and I have a million stories to tell. I thank you so much for listening today, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions? Anybody have questions?
Mhm.
Somebody's got questions.
I
Pam,
think Ms.
Pam, I have a question. I'd be curious to know what the requirements are of being a volunteer, and what does that process look like to potentially joining your organization or to be a chaplain?
That's an excellent question. I'm glad you mentioned that. We require that all of our chaplains have a minimum of 5 years experience, either as a minister or as a type of counselor. Sometimes grief counselors will make very good chaplains as well, but we require a minimum of 5 years of experience in ministry. We require them to go through our 50-hour academy. We require that they will agree to take one duty day a month, that they will agree to do ride-alongs a month, and that they will continue our training that we do on a monthly basis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pam, what's the mood of the officers today with everything that's been going on with the rioting, the looting, the defund the police? What are you all picking up when you go to roll calls and conversations?
It is definitely taking a toll on the officers. The morale is very low. They are concerned about their safety, and many of them are being pressured by spouses who are concerned. They're worried about their officers being able to come home. You know, we don't hear about the things that are happening to officers. And I will be the first to admit there have been mistakes made and there have been wrongs committed. But 99% of all police officers are very dedicated servants who are there to protect and defend people. And it's been very demoralizing to all of them to be lumped into the group of all the others. And we don't hear about things that are happening to the officers. For instance, a few weeks ago, one of our officers was shot at multiple times. And I don't think we heard anything about that. But if one of our officers should happen to have to shoot someone else, and so we would hear quite a bit about that. And so I think it is very discouraging to them to know, because they are working very hard and they are very dedicated to do a good job. And the potential, the risk for them being injured or killed is much, much greater than it was. And so it is a very difficult time right now. That's why we're trying to find different ways that we can continue to support them. We just show up at roll calls. We're trying to be at every roll call right now to encourage them. We'll many times be asked to share a scripture with them in roll call. We'll be asked to pray with them in roll call. But that's the most probably that we can do with them right now, is just to show up and to be there for them. It's what we're trying to do. We're hoping that we can get back to doing ride-alongs again. When you're in that patrol car with the officer, there's that privacy where they can open up and talk, and you can help relieve some of that stress. Does that answer your question, Tom?
Yes. I'll be down there this afternoon at 4 o'clock, by the way. I'm interviewing Keno Carlos.
Oh, great guy.
You know him.
I do. Very, very fine man. Really appreciate him. He's a wonderful man and a great officer.
Yeah. Other questions for Pam?
Any questions for Reverend Neal?
And this job is a tough job for the chaplains as well. What's the turnover rate amongst chaplains?
You know, it's very surprising because our turnover is really very low. When someone feels this as a calling, and are as committed and dedicated as our chaplains are. Usually the only way I lose chaplains is if they should be transferred to another city with their church, or if someone gets to a point where they can't do it health-wise or age-wise. We have very little turnover of chaplains. I have maybe twice in my 22 years known, there have been a couple recently where a chaplain felt it was just too dangerous. And the chaplain's spouse said, I don't want you doing this anymore. And because we are out there with them. And when we get called out to a scene, we are with them. I can say I've had one experience in my time where I actually was frightened in a situation. But our officers are very protective of their chaplains too. And we have protocol to keep us safe so they don't have to worry about us, because when they're dealing with a situation, they don't have to worry about keeping the chaplain safe. So we have some protocols where we try to do that, but they're very protective of their chaplains. And this situation I was talking about, the officer just said, Chaplain, I would really feel better if you would sit in your car till this is over. So that's what I did.
One additional question. You've been a chaplain for 25 years, and in that period of time, we've seen an enormous increase in the number of people having handguns or other firearms in their homes, in their vehicles, and whatever. To what extent has that made policing more difficult from your perspective?
Well, I don't think that that's made policing more difficult, because a lot of the more people that have firearms in their homes many times are not the people that are causing trouble with firearms. And I think the difficulties for the police officers are the firearms on the street that are not legal firearms and have been obtained to do harm. And so I'm not sure the increase in firearms. I know many officers, and they arm their spouses and they take them to the firing range and teach them how to shoot, because they want them to be able to protect themselves. So I don't think that's affected it negatively.
Great, thank you.
Have any other questions?
Yeah, I've got two questions, if I may, please.
Sure.
First of all, if I'm hearing things correctly, all I've heard talked about is Knoxville Police Department. I haven't heard anybody say anything about the Knox County Sheriff's Office. So the first question is, do chaplains provide support to the sheriff's deputies as well as to the Knoxville police officers? That was question number one. Question number two, are any of the chaplains retired ministers, or are they all actively involved in a church, which would definitely make them younger people?
Those are two very good questions. The Knox County Sheriff's Office has its own chaplain corps. They are very similar to ours. In fact, their corps was an offshoot of ours many years ago. And they do have chaplains. Now, there are times when we can actually help each other. And there have been times where some of our chaplains have helped some of their chaplains. And so we're all very open to helping each other in times of need. But for the most part, the Knox County chaplains and as well as officers will be covering calls that are outside the city limits. And then Knox City chaplains will cover those inside the city limits. And we've even sometimes covered calls for the fire department, because they actually only have one chaplain for the fire department. He is a full-time paid chaplain, but he can't be there all the time. And so we will actually cover fire department calls sometimes. So we're all very good about helping each other. And several of our chaplains are retired ministers. Now, we would accept a chaplain who is a retired minister, and many of them who come on as ministers and retire will continue as chaplains. I heard a chaplain one time actually say that his chaplaincy, he felt he was doing more serving God's people as a chaplain than he did as a minister. It's a wide open field for ministering to people in the department and in the community. The opportunities to minister to people in crisis is just unbelievable. But so when a minister retires from his church, most of the time he will continue to serve as a chaplain. I have one right now in his 80s who's retired from his church. He's getting ready to be emeritus, I think, because I'm not sure he can continue to do the duty days and so forth. But they will continue even after they retire from their churches.
Pam, is there, I may be on mute, I'm not sure. No, can you hear me, Pam?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any differences between the chaplains overseas in other countries and how they operate versus how the chaplains here operate?
That's very, very good question. It is very different in some of the other countries. Some of our African countries that are part of the ICPC have very different roles for police officers. Multiple, a lot of duty deaths in some of those countries. Jamaica is another one that has multiple line of duty deaths every year. We are in the process of translating all of our training materials into the languages of all of these different countries. We're right now talking to the Philippines. They have asked us to develop a program for them, and then we will go over to the Philippines and train a group of chaplains to start police chaplaincy in the Philippines. So in some of these countries, policing is much different. And we see chaplaincy, of course, is going to mean much differently. So we're going to have to adjust our training materials that we use in the United States. Of course, the vast majority of our members are in the United States, but not everything we do can apply in these other countries. And so we're trying to help them adapt our materials in a way that will help them with their police departments and their chaplains.
Thank you. I remember when we talked, you said one of your focus areas during your 2-year term was going to be on education. And this year sounds like that's part of that.
It was in 2007, I became chair of the education committee for ICPC. And at that time, we had said we had 12 basic courses, but there was no material. We actually had 12 titles, and everyone just taught them the way they wanted to. So during my tenure as education chair, we actually developed a curriculum so that every one of those classes it had handouts, it had everything that a person needed, and it became standardized. All of our classes had the same type of material to where all of our instructors teach the same things everywhere. And so now, of course, things change and times change and circumstances change. We're right now revising all of those again so that we are up to date and the best material out there. People are wanting to use our materials all over the country, and as I say, adapting it all over the world to use our training materials. And that's one of the things I'm really proud of, is actually to have had a part in us standardizing and developing curriculum that can be taught anywhere.
He's playing this weekend. High school football started up last week, and again, different places have.
Somebody needs to mute Ron. Pam, I've got one more question for you.
Yes, sir.
I'm thinking about all of this as from my perspective as a person with not a whole lot of knowledge. I can imagine you've got situations where it may be helpful if the chaplain that is providing service, whether to an officer or to a member of the community, is able to speak a different language, maybe of a particular gender, maybe of a particular ethnicity or race. Do you have the flexibility to provide that, or is it whoever's next up gets to play the role of chaplain in a particular situation?
We have from time to time had some chaplains with some of those skills, and it comes in handy. One thing to mention it too is that we are very diverse in our religious affiliations in chaplaincy too, so that we have chaplains of all different religious backgrounds, because sometimes someone might say, if there's a death or something, I would like your Jewish chaplain, I would like your Catholic chaplain. Mm-hmm. But we also know, as our police officers do, that we have access to people who can help us with those things. For instance, the university will provide translators for us. We actually had a call one time where a man came through town and was mugged, and beaten up and all of his money and credit cards stolen. And we were called down to help him at the hospital to help him get back on his way. But the trick was not only was the man deaf, but he spoke Russian.
Oh, Lord.
Wow.
I said, gosh, are they going to be able to give us a translator? And sure enough, University of Tennessee sent us a translator that could do both. So sometimes it might take a little time, but we have wonderful relationship with them where they will send us translators when we need them.
That's
We
awesome.
actually have some police officers too that are trained in sign language and some other languages that we can call to help us if we need that too. But someone asked me a while ago about qualifications to be a chaplain. I would mention to you, if you know of someone, or even if one of you has an interest, I have an application form. I can send anyone. They can send it back to me. We do an interview process. Of course, there's a background check as if anyone that's at the police department. And I just thought I would let you know that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Reverend Neal. We would certainly like to thank you for being a part of such a great service. And we applaud you for your longevity and your years of service in doing so.
You've been wonderful audience. Thank you all so much for having me and for listening. And thank you for all the great questions. I've enjoyed being with you.
Thank you so much. And we will remember the James Bond shaken, not stirred.
I'll be calling you, Pam. Sit tight.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other announcements or anything that we have from anybody before we close out? Okay. Bear with me a moment. We would like to close our meeting with our four-way test. The four-way test is the thing we think. The four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair
to all concerned?
Third,
Will it
Goodwill and better friendships.
the friendships. Fourth,
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?